Hi guys, and welcome to your second Excel workshop. This week we're going to talk about numerical data and mainly about how we can summarize them using very simple central tendencies. I also want to show you a couple of other things to do with starting to create graphs, which we're going to then talk more about next week, especially about how to manipulate graphs. We're just going to sort of generally play around with the data a little bit. Now, the data set in front of you here, as most of you will know, has been collected by a group of students this academic year. And they are divided within workshop groups, as well as groups within that workshop. There's different students, they're from different courses, and what they did is they measured using measuring tapes, or what you did is using measuring tapes to measure height as well as arm span in centimeters. And this is the complete data set. Okay, so quite a few students there. Now, as last time, there are some data in here which are in gaps where there was either not that many people in the group or they didn't input the data. So as last time, first of all, I want to just repeat how to organize and sort data. Now, as I showed you before, you have to sort data using all of the columns. All of the bits of information that was collected on each person has to stay together, so you need to sort all of the columns together. And the best way to highlight them to do that is to just highlight at the top here the A, press the cursor down, hold it down, and go all the way to column G, just because in column G some people have made some notes about their measurements. Okay, then we want to, Then we want to go into the Home tab, we want to go to Sort and Delete, and we want to go to Custom Sort. And today I would like you to sort the data by course. Okay, as last time we had to make sure that My Data Has Headers is selected here, and we want to sort this today by course. And then if we press OK, we have the different courses in alphabetical order. So first, all of the students who are Unman, Canine, Vet Nursing, Wildlife, and Zoo Management. Down here at the bottom, we have all the empty rows. And what I'd like you to do is to delete those. And I showed you this last time, I'll show it to you again. The best way to do that is to highlight all of the rows, again using the same technique that you did when you highlighted all the columns. Just hover over the first one, which is empty, click on it, hold the cursor down, and then drag it all the way to the last empty row. Then you want to go right click and delete, and now all of those cells are gone. And then generally it's always a good idea to sort of, go through the data, scroll through it, make sure everything's okay. So here, for example, we have one person who input a height but not an arm span. Because we want both bits of information here, we're going to exclude that person from the data set. So as you did down below, and this is a good opportunity to show you what happens when you disconnect information, okay? So they didn't put this in here, so we could just say, okay, well, why don't we just delete this cell? So I'll show you what happens when you do that. If I just click on this one cell which is empty and I want to get rid of, and I go right click and delete, then Excel will ask me, as always, what I want to do with the other cells. And if I go shift cells up, then all of a sudden that person now has a measurement, but they didn't supply one. This measurement belongs to the person below them, this vet nursing students. And now all of the measurements have gone out of sync. And you will see that right at the bottom, this last one now doesn't have a measurement, because we have moved not just the contents but the actual cells around. Okay, if I go back, it moves back down. So it's taken this whole chunk of data and moved it one up. And now all of the data is wrongly disconnected, because that measurement is not this student's measurement, it's this student's measurement. So we've disconnected the information. We don't want to do that. Okay. So if you have to delete something, you have to delete the whole row. The whole person has to go. Right click and delete, and they are gone. Okay, so now our data is pretty much nice and tidy. What I'd like you to do now is to create averages of all of these data. And as I've explained in the lecture, an average is calculated by summing up all of the values in the data set and then dividing them by the number of values in that data set. Okay, so if we had to manually sum all of these up using a calculator, that would take us forever. But luckily, Excel has a function that can do that. So let me show you. As before, if you want to calculate anything in Excel, you start with equals, and then you want to tell Excel what function you want to use. If you're not sure what it's called, it's always worth potentially just having a look up here and actually choosing one of these. In this case, we want to use the average function. Okay, and if you click on it here, if you find the function in this sort of quick sum, quick function button, it actually then automatically, there you go, it will then automatically select the range of data that is above the cell in which you've selected the function. So in this case, that is this whole column of data. So because you have organized the data correctly into columns for at each variable and rows for each individual data point, Excel can now predict that, well, you're probably going to want the average of all of these cells above this one. And all you need to do now is actually hit enter, and it will reveal the average for height in this big course. And that is 173.036056. Okay. Now you can tell Excel that you don't want this many decimal places very simply by changing the formatting of the cell, and that's done up here. At the moment, the formatting is set to general, but if you just go on to this little arrow and go to more number formats, you can do all sorts of things with this. Now we know that this is a number, we know it's numerical data, and we can, if we click on that, actually decide how many decimal places we want it to show. And if we do that, it's now down to 173.04, which is a bit easier to digest. Okay, now the next thing I want you to do is to tell me what the average is for arm span. Okay, so do exactly the same thing and then tell me the result in a question. Okay, so hopefully you've all got this result, which is 170.38. Now you might have got here in two different ways. You could have done, just typed equals average, open bracket, highlight all these cells, close bracket, hit enter. Okay, it gives you this result. You might also have clicked on this cell and then gone to this button and just clicked average, and it will automatically select the above range for your average. Now the third way in which you can do this is to drag the formula across. As I showed you last week in the extended task, I showed you how to drag the contents and formula from a cell into another. And I also showed you how to prevent the range from changing. Now in this example, it's actually useful when that happens. So let me show you what I mean. We've calculated here the average of the height of people. Okay, so the average of all of the contents within the cells in this column here. And we also wanted the average of all of the cells in this range. And what we can do is we can drag, using this plus sign at the bottom right corner of the cell, drag this to the right. And in this case, Excel will automatically shift the selection to the right as well. And we have what we wanted, which is the average for arm span instead of height. Okay, so really useful thing for Excel to do for us. So now we have these two averages. And one of the things that we could do with these two averages now is to insert those into a very simple graph. Now, as I mentioned in the lecture, numerical data can be represented in a summary in a chart using averages in a bar chart, and that's what I want to create today. So as last time, we would highlight the cells that we want within the bar chart, and then we would go to the Insert tab and then just select the very simple 2D column. Okay. And what it does is it creates this really simple chart, gives us the measurements on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we have these two blocks Now the height of the block represents the mean in both cases. So we have the average arm span and the average height. Now unfortunately we didn't tell Excel that what these different categories are called. We just highlighted the actual values, but this is one good opportunity to show you how to manipulate data a little bit in Excel. And you can do that by clicking onto the chart anywhere within this sort of empty area at the top. And if you right click, one of the things you can do is go to select data, and that tells you what is included within the chart. At the moment the data range is just these two cells, and it says that the legend, so the entry, is series 1, and within that you will find that it has these two values. Okay, so this is the series, this is the data that you have included here. If you edit it, you can see that here those are the measurements, and it shows you where it's highlighted. Okay, you could give this series a name. If you go to edit, you could call it measurement, for example. Okay, and the other thing is you can tell Excel that horizontally the category axis labels are actually not just 1 and 2, they have proper names, and we can edit that going on to here and then telling Excel which labels we want this data to have. And we used obviously the height and arm span in these two columns. And if we insert that and then click OK, Excel has now automatically assorted the label height to this value and the label arm span to this value, because these two are in one column together, and Excel knows that the columns usually contain categories or the different variables, and the rows represent data points. So it is correctly assigned height to this value and arm span to this. And if we now click OK, we have in here the information that these are the measurements. We know that these are the averages of the different measurements of arm span and height. And we also have the correct labels at the bottom here. There are loads of other things that you can do with this. You can add axis labels, and later on next week we're going to learn how to add error bars to this chart as well. But for now, this is the end of the first video. So go on to the second one to learn how to do some other calculations and do some more averaging as well.